Hello everyone. Okay, you asked me in class to work out a simple consumer and producer surplus problem, and that's what I have set up here. And I think I'll also go ahead and add taxes to this simple supply and demand graph, and then we can show the loss of consumer surplus, the gain or the loss in producer surplus, and the gain in tax revenue, and we can show the deadweight loss. My recommendation to you is to stop this video from time to time and see if you can work ahead of me and then just confirm your answers with my video. If you just follow me all the way to the end, you and I both will be nervous about whether you can actually do it on your own. Okay, so let's begin. So the first thing to do is to find the equilibrium price, and that's easy enough. Equilibrium price, of course, is just where the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. So solving for the equilibrium price, I just set 2p minus 200 equals 1200 minus 3p, and that gives me 1400 divided by 5. So I get an equilibrium price of 280. For those of you who are really rusty with this, I did that simply by setting quantity demanded equal to quantity supplied, and I just solved it. Once I have the equilibrium price, I can solve for the equilibrium quantity, because the equilibrium quantity is defined to be either the quantity demanded or the quantity supplied at the equilibrium price. So you can just put your equilibrium price of 280 into the supply equation. Just a minute, that's probably President Obama calling again. He calls all the time. Let's see who this is. Hello, Arnold Height. All right, so listen, President Obama, I already told you last week what you needed to do to get the economy going, and you haven't done that yet. So go ahead, just do those things that I asked you to do, and the economy will get better. And try not to call me at work. You know, a student's education comes first. You have a good day, and my love to Michelle. Talk to you later. Bye. Okay, sorry about that. He's really stressed about the economy. So back to work. Well, where was I? Oh yeah, we're looking for the equilibrium quantity. Is defined to be the quantity demanded or the quantity supplied at the equilibrium price. So working from the supply equation or from the demand equation, we can see that the equilibrium quantity is 2 times 280 minus 200. I get 360. So I did that from the supply equation, but you could do it from the demand equation. It would be 3 times 280, and then that whole mess subtracted from 1200. And I get the same answer, 360. The next thing we need to do is figure out consumer and producer surplus. Is the area above the supply curve but below the selling price. So this is producer surplus here, that triangle. And to discover the area of that triangle, I'm going to need this point right here. So think about logically what that point is. That's the selling price where producers first come into the market. So looking at the supply equation, that's the selling price where the quantity supplied goes from 0 to some positive amount. So setting it equal to 0, I get 0 is equal to 2p minus 200. Adding 200 to both sides, 200 equals 2p, dividing through by 2, p is 100. So this number right here is 100. Okay. Now we can find the producer surplus. Is simply the area of the triangle, 1/2 the base times the height. So turning the triangle 90 degrees counterclockwise, the base then would be this distance right here. That would be the base, so that would be 180. So it would be 1/2 times 180 times the height, and then the height would be this distance right here. And I show the height is 360. So producer surplus would be 0.5 times 180 times 360. I get producer surplus of 32,400. So now to find consumer surplus, the area below the demand curve but above the selling price, so that would be this area right here. So I'm going to need this price up here. And this, of course, is the price where the quantity demanded is 0. So working from my demand equation here, I'm looking for the price P where the quantity demanded is 0. So it would be 0 equals 1200 minus 3P. Adding 3P to both sides, I get 3P equals 1200. Dividing through by 3, I get P is 400. Hope you got that. P is 400, so that's this number up here. Okay. Now again, to find consumer surplus, I just need to find the area of that triangle. So I'm going to take that blue triangle and rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise again, and that makes this the base. And then the height, of course, would be, I hate to kind of mark in there, the height would be that distance from 0 out to 360. So I would get 1/2 the base, which is the difference between 400 and 280. I get 120 times the height, which was 360. So I get consumer surplus is 21,600. All right, hope you got that. Now let's add a tax. And how about a tax of $25? So if we put a tax of $25, what's going to happen is that original supply equation is going to shift up, a parallel shift, something like this, where the vertical distance between these two curves is $25. We're going to get a new supply equation up here after the tax. And that's a little bit difficult. Those of you who don't remember how to do it, I'll show you. But this point down here is kind of easy since we know that the tax is exactly $25. The new y-intercept would be equal to the old y-intercept of 100 plus 25. So this number is 125. But we need this equation. Now there are two ways to get it. One is to memorize this little rule. I hate memorizing these rules, but I know that you like them, so I'll give it to you. You can take the unit tax, which is 25, you multiply it by the coefficient on P, which was 2, so 2 times 25 is 50, and whatever that is, that 50, you subtract it from the constant term. But be very careful. You're subtracting it from the constant term, and the constant term is currently minus 200. So when you subtract that 50, you would get 2p minus 250. The other way to do it, if you forget the shortcut, is to just undo Alfred Marshall's kind of weird way he wrote the supply equations and write them in the form that you would write them in a math class, y equals mx plus b, and then just add the 25 to the b term, and then put, of course, Alfred Marshall's mistake back. It takes a little while, but you can do it that way. So anyway, here's our new setup. We're going to get a new equilibrium price here. We're going to find this new equilibrium price the same way we found the old one, by setting the equilibrium quantity demanded, by setting the quantity demanded equal to the quantity supplied. I worked this out previously and I got 290. And then down here, this is the tax, right? The vertical distance between the two curves is the tax everywhere. So I'm looking at it right here. Can you see where I'm drawing? Looking at the tax right there. So if that distance is 25, this number over here must be 290 minus 25, or 265. The new equilibrium quantity would be 330. Okay, so that's the result of our tax. And now let's see what's happened to consumer surplus and producer surplus. Well, consumer surplus is now going to be the area of the smaller blue triangle. I'll use my blue marker and try to highlight it for you. It'd be this triangle right here, the area below the demand curve but above the selling price, which is now here. So it'd be this triangle. You see that? And that triangle is found just like all the others. So I get the consumer surplus as 110 times a half times 330. I get 18,150. And that makes sense because it should be less since the tax has taken some of the original consumer surplus. Then producer surplus, of course, has also gone down. And its new area is the area above the supply curve. That's this black line down here, and their new price, which is the 265. So the producer surplus is now this triangle right here. Hope you can see that. I get the producer surplus is now 27,225. So it's really obvious that producer surplus and consumer surplus are both less. But don't forget there's also the tax revenue generated. So the tax revenue generated is this weird box right here. Let me see if I can draw it for you. That weird box right there, because it's the $25, which is the difference between the price consumers get. This is the price consumers get right here. And the price producers receive, that's over here. The difference between those is $25 times the number of units sold, which was 330. So that would be 330 times 25. So I get the tax revenue generated is $8,250. That's of course available for public goods. So the total surplus after the tax would be $53,625, and the total surplus before the tax, $54,000. So I hope you can see that there's a loss, a deadweight loss of the difference between 54,000 and 53,625. So I get a dead weight loss of 375. By the way, you could find that dead weight loss another way. This is probably the way I'll ask you to do it on a test. You can find that dead weight loss if you realize that it's represented graphically as this tiny little triangle right in there. It's just the consumer surplus and the producer surplus that's lost. Consumer surplus and producer surplus that's lost when you put on the tax. So of course that big X'd out green box was lost, but it was also gained as tax revenue. But this little triangle, I'm out of color, so I'm just going to try to color it in black if I can. This little triangle right here is consumer and producer surplus that was lost, and no one gained it. So I hope that helped you. Let's see, I'll find my image. Here I am. I'm sorry that the computer timed out, and hope that wasn't too distracting. And good luck as you prepare for the first test.